Hey everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm Jesse Lavelle, and today I'm going to help you decide which mirrorless Canon R body is right for you. If you're in the market for a Canon R, RP, R6, or R5 and you can't decide which one is right for you, well, I'm going to help you out a little bit with that, because the way that I look at this is there's really the Canon Gen 1 cameras, which is the Canon R and the RP, and then you have the Gen 2 cameras, and that's the Canon R6 and the R5. So you've got to decide which one of those you want to go with. Are you going to go with the old school Gen 1, which really uses the dual pixel 1 autofocus system, and it reused older sensors from the DSLR cameras that Canon had in its older DSLR lineup, or do you want something that's a little bit newer, like the Canon R6 and the Canon R5? Now, the Canon R6 did recycle its sensor. It's using the 1DX Mark III sensor, which wasn't a DSLR camera, but that was a very expensive, very high-end professional camera, and the R5 has a brand new sensor in it. Now, the thing about having the Canon R6 and the Canon R5 sensors, and I can't speak directly for the Canon R5 sensor, but I can tell you from the Canon R6 sensor, it has way more dynamic range than my RP does, and that's like a really huge thing that's definitely going to be very noticeable for somebody who's recording video or even pictures. The dynamic range is really a big difference between using a Canon RP and a Canon R6 sensor. That's one thing that definitely makes me want to use my Canon R6 when I'm outside, and it's something that I definitely notice as a drawback when I do use my Canon RP. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love my Canon RP, but it just has a lot of limitations that the Canon R6 really improved upon. The dual pixel autofocus 1 system in the Canon RP is decent, but it's very slow, and it doesn't track nearly the amount of types of subjects that my Canon R6 does. My Canon R6 can track vehicles, animals, and animals' eyes, as well as being way more aggressive and way better about just finding its target. It's just way faster than the Canon RP is. And it works in lower light conditions, as well as having higher ISO performance from the sensor. There's just really no comparing the two. Just hands down, if you have the money for a Canon R6 or R5, you definitely want to invest in one of those camera bodies instead of getting the Canon RP or the Canon R. Now, I'm not saying if that's what's in your budget, don't get one of those cameras. I love my RP, and if it's the only thing that I could afford, I'd be happy with it. I love my Canon RP, and I'm sure the Canon R is that much better, seeing as it's recycling the sensor from the Canon 5D Mark IV. But the dual pixel 1 autofocus is definitely a step back, and when I say a step back, I mean a significant step back from the dual pixel 2 autofocus that you're going to get with the Canon R6 and the Canon R5. And I truly do believe that anybody that's going to want to spend thousands of dollars on a camera is definitely going to want something that's going to come with some of the newer technology and some of the really aggressive autofocus that comes with the newer cameras. And I think people expect this level of autofocus, and I think people will be a little bit disappointed with the amount of money that they'll put in 2022 on a Canon RP or a Canon R and have to deal with how slow the autofocus is. And it's really like, it's not that it's bad, it's just that once you've experienced where Canon's gone with dual pixel 2 autofocus, it's really something that you definitely want. It's something that if I was in the market today, it would definitely be a prerequisite for a camera that I would be purchasing today in 2022. The dual pixel 2 autofocus is going to give you vehicle tracking, animal eye tracking, animal tracking in general. There's a bunch of things that are better about it as far as what types of subjects it can track, but also it's just better in the sense that it's way faster, it's way more aggressive when it comes to tracking. It's just an overall better autofocus system, period. Hands down, it's the first thing that somebody's gonna notice when they switch between the two different generations of cameras. But you also can recover shadow detail without adding noise. So that was the big thing for me. I'm a macro photographer. A lot of times I'm shooting with kind of harsh lighting because of my flash, and the ability to be able to recover the shadows without adding noise is really advantageous for me. Another factor that would make me really want to consider getting an R6 or R5 over the RP or R is burst rates. The burst rates are 12 frames per second when using mechanical mode and 20 frames per second when using electronic shutter mode. Now, those burst rates far surpass what the RP or R can do, so if you're into wildlife or action photography, hands down you're going to want to get one of these Generation 2 cameras. Another thing that I was really excited about the Canon R6 was that it had IBIS in it. I have to say that that's probably the thing that I was most excited about that made the least amount of difference when I moved over to it. Another thing to consider is the fact that it has superior weather sealing when you move into a Canon R6 or an R5. The Canon R is better weather sealed than the Canon RP, but the Canon R6 definitely weather sealed. I've brought it out in the rain many times, gotten it soaked, had literally no issues with it whatsoever. Now, I wouldn't do that with my RP. I do bring the RP out in light rain, but I don't bring it out in what I would be willing to put my Canon R6 through. If you're somebody who's into using flash photography and you use high-speed sync, you're gonna run into some issues if you have an RP like I do. The fact that it only has an electronic shutter makes it so that you get banding when you're using high-speed sync. It doesn't happen all the time. It's definitely a big pain in the butt that I don't even like using it if I'm gonna use high-speed sync flash. So that's another reason that if you're into high-speed sync flash, you're going to want to consider getting the R6 or the R5, because that's going to give you the ability to choose whether you use an electronic or a physical shutter. Using the physical shutter will solve all of those banding problems when using flash. The 10-bit internal recording video with C-Log and C-Log 3 is another really huge advantage using the Canon R6 or Canon R5 that you're not going to get if you choose to get a Canon RP or a Canon R. Now, if you're somebody like me who shoots a lot of video with these cameras, that's going to be something that's very important. The 10-bit footage is honestly like the biggest reason that I got this camera, hands down. I love the video footage that comes off from the Canon R6. I'm sure if you were to spring for a Canon R5, it's only going to be that much better because you're going to have 8K and all that craziness that I don't think I would ever really need. But the video footage that comes off from these cameras are just so amazing. And the footage that comes off from the RP is still nice, but it doesn't even hold a candle to what I can get from my Canon R6. So again, guys, if you're considering getting a new Canon Mirrorless R body, these are all reasons why I think you should go for a Gen 2 camera body. Again, those are what I'm calling the Canon R6 and Canon R5 bodies, instead of one of the Generation 1 Canon mirrorless bodies like a Canon RP or a Canon R. Now, if the Canon RP or the Canon R are all that's in the budget, there's nothing wrong with getting those cameras. That's what I started with. I love my Canon RP and I still use it daily as a backup cam to my Canon R6. It's just if I was in the market for a camera today, I would hope that somebody would tell me these things, because these are the things that I would want to know before I went and purchased my next camera. I've been extremely happy with the Canon R6, and I foresee myself being happy with the Canon R6 for years forward. I'm very happy with it. It does everything that I need it to do. It does have limitations. It's not the perfect camera. There are overheating limitations when it comes to video production. There is no 4K 120 frames per second. It does have some noise issues when you're shooting in C-Log. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I definitely think that if I were in the market today, I would definitely want to go for either a Canon R6 or an R5 and not a Canon RP or a Canon R. Even though I do love my Canon RP and I do think that those cameras are great, and like I said, if that's all you can squeeze with your budget, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going with one of those cameras either, because they certainly will get the job done. Albeit they might not do what the latest and greatest have to offer, they're still going to be very phenomenal, very good cameras, and I do love my Canon RP, use it every day. Anyway, guys, I hope this answers a couple of questions that you might have had about what Canon R body you might want to purchase. If it did, think about going below, subscribing, clicking the notification bell. It really helps me to be able to make more videos for you guys like this, and I'll see you on my next video.